welcome to Cinema Smackdown for Sunday, October 13th. And as 13ths are always that fun, bad luck, whatever day of the week they are.
What better day of the month to begin this theme?
Exactly. We'll do our 13th show. Happy Halloween, Shane, by which I mean the month of October.
The month, it's a month-long Christmas for me.
It's for most people.
For morbid weirdos.
Although if you don't know this, filmmaker Adam Green, who we all really admire, filmmaker Adam Green, who did start off his career making a couple of okay movies, has publicly stated that he celebrates Halloween from August 1st until October 31st. He decorates his house on the 1st of August.
He's the Hatchet guy, right?
That's him.
Yeah. Also, Frozen.
Yes, he made one great movie starring two ladies who sing a lot.
Yep.
And,
Yep.
I remember a lot of singing at the top of that ski lift.
Yeah, I thought it was screaming, but we'll go with go with singing.
At any rate, he made that, and then he made an innumerable amount of terrible, terrible films. It's like he had a head injury and lost the ability to tell stories. So.
No, it's the hypothermia he suffered shooting Frozen.
Yeah, if you don't know this, he actually made a movie in which he is the star, playing himself, being convinced by a crazy person that there are monsters living underground in the neighborhood he lives in. And then he, like a bad fake documentary, tries to find these monsters, which are terrible hand puppets by the time you get around to seeing them. And
this sounds awesome, yet incredibly self-indulgent at the same time.
My favorite...
Because puppets are awesome, and making films about yourself is really just narcissistic in a very unhealthy sort of way.
The best possible review was one he read aloud on the air of his podcast, not understanding the review, which I thought was amazing.
Oh.
He didn't get it enough.
Adam Green is almost convincing as himself.
No, it's a really rough one. It's only one sentence. The review was, well, Adam Green certainly is in the Adam Green business. To which he replied, well, yeah. I'm fully not comprehending that was probably the most insulting thing anyone would
For a
ever
trolly
say to him.
internet review, that one is a little under the radar for a narcissist anyway.
But it was pretty apt. I'm going to put myself in a movie where I play me discovering monsters. Oh, that doesn't sound pretentious at all. All right, well, let's get on to our exciting Halloween topic for this week's episode of Cinema Smackdown on CJL's 1690 AM. I don't even know if I introduced us. My name is Michael Brody. I'm joined today by Shane Simmons.
The usual suspects.
Shane, you have a little thing you do most weeks, which is you curate a movie night on Wednesdays, where you have a group of dedicated film lovers who, for some reason, don't seem to have seen what I would consider to be
the baseline
movies that people should see if they're film lovers. But anyway, you bring strange films and you force them on them, and you've been doing this for...
And they pillory me for it.
You've been doing this for somewhere between 15 and 20 years, right?
Yeah, I think it was 17 last I checked.
Right, so but 17 years of weekly film nights. And
it adds up.
As you have mentioned, sometimes you'll do a theme month. And so October is the perfect theme month to subject people to your odd sense of right and wrong and humor and whatever.
Yeah, much as I'd like to do theme nights where we did double or triple features, unfortunately this happens on a work night, and a lot of these people actually have real jobs, unlike me.
Or they're just cranky and old. I'm cranky.
90
minutes is long.
Or in one case we have a current attendee who commutes in from Mirabel just to be at movie night, but that's a hell of a drive to go watch a movie at someone's house.
Yeah, well, especially if you're going to watch 3.
Yeah.
Especially if that 3 is 2 of the Lord of the Rings movies and then one of those Hobbit films. And then maybe
we'll go with the ultra short theatrical cuts.
Let's throw in the director's cut of Midsummer for a short movie. So
well, speaking of Adam Green and Frozen, that was indeed one of our Halloween movies one year, and it was quite popular with one of our attendees who has issues with broken bones.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
That's a rough movie.
Yeah, she was pregnant at the time and excused herself during what she saw as a pending broken bone moment, and I made sure we paused it until she got back. Usually we have a no pause for bathroom breaks rule, but because if we do, the movie stops for 20 minutes as everyone in the room goes to take a pee.
So after she went into labor, how premature was the baby?
Yeah, thankfully the baby came out all well and alive and happy, and is now, God, I think 7 or 8 years old. So, time marches on.
I thought you were going to say 30.
Feels that way.
That baby is now 30 and on his third wife. So, the month of October was rife for you to pick some...
Yeah, well, we're actually on hiatus most of this month because our usual hosts are traveling. So I'm jonesing for some Halloween-themed movie night stuff, and missing a couple of weeks in October is a good way to screw up any attempts to do a theme month. Mm-hmm. So I thought I'd talk about some of the past theme months we've had in previous years.
Well, why don't you get to it? Give us your first theme month, and then I will give you my opinions of your choices, and we can debate the good or bad of all of it.
I think you'll be happy with some of these choices. So last year, I began with the idea of doing a body horror month, and there was enough crossover that it ended up mutating into a cult theme horror month. Mm-hmm. But for body horror, I had to go with one of the obvious choices. You have to go with a David Cronenberg film. If you're going with a David Cronenberg body horror film, well, I mean, there's a lot to choose from, but...
It's all of them.
It's kind of all of them,
Even
yeah.
Even Butterfly falls under this category.
Yeah. Well, I had to go with a particular classic that a few people at movie night had never seen before, which was Videodrome.
Mm-hmm. Admittedly, my favorite of the weirdest of them all.
Yeah, it's up there with being one of the more peculiar, I would say peculiar, mature era Cronenberg films. He has some early stuff that's awfully rough around the edges back from the tax credit days of Canadian cinema. But I'd say he starts to really come into his own around Scanners. Mm-hmm. And Videodrome was very soon after that. James Woods discovers an underground pirate cable station. Back when cable was a thing and people hadn't cut their cable line for, all their streaming choices instead. And, he pulls in some weird stuff and goes in to investigate where the signal is coming from. And it turns into this increasingly nightmarish loss of self. Mm-hmm. Also featuring a rare dramatic role for Debbie Harry of Blondie fame.
Yep.
And, I think I got a collective agreement of from a lot of the more literal-minded viewers in the crowd. It certainly has a fairly ambiguous ending, I would say. It's been a while since I've seen it,
it's an artistic masterpiece in its own way, but it exists in its own universe the same way a David Lynch movie does. And
it very much so. For something that's inevitably marketed as hey, everybody, here's a fun horror movie, I'm sure that got a collective shrug from many people back in the early 80s when it came out. It's a hybrid of goopy horror and art house.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually love the ending.
Mm-hmm.
And Cronenberg clearly loved the ending because he essentially uses the exact same ending for his film Naked Lunch. They are very nearly mirrored.
It's been so long since I've seen Naked Lunch. I would have to refresh my memory on that one.
It also ends with a guy standing in essentially a doorway making a big statement that's similar to the statement James Woods makes at the end of the film. And it's just an interesting moment of, well, this is Videodrome. Peter Weller is now in Videodrome, I see.
Yeah, but the society that surrounds the whole Videodrome experience within the film is just a hint of cultishness. Mm-hmm. So that when I went with my next film, I started to realize, this is sort of like a hybrid theme. Mm-hmm. The next one is a much more recent film called Starry Eyes.
Yes.
Fledgling actress in Hollywood finds out the hard way how far she's willing to go to become a star.
Mm-hmm.
And it's quite a grisly body horror film, but again also has a very cult-like setting surrounding this based in reality sort of recruitment behavior for, you know, the idea of Hollywood being, oh, well, we take young stars, young promising, beautiful people, and we just chew them up and spit them out. And if you make it, then terrible, terrible sacrifices need to be made to your body and soul.
It has a tone that works. There's something kind of magical about that. It's a very small movie too, and it launched those two directors into a very good position to get big jobs. And their first big job was the Stephen King adaptation this year, Pet Sematary, which doesn't work. And I don't blame them for this, because when you see the film, it's very clearly edited down by producers, like to an alarming degree, because they made a Pet Sematary movie, they being Hollywood made a Pet Sematary movie in the 90s, which is about 2 hours and feels truncated. It feels like, well, we had this 700-page book, but we can't make a TV miniseries out of it, so we're just going to take all the major beats and make a horror film out of that, which they did, and you watch it and you go, it's a little... It's not even the film itself that's fast-paced. They just jam all the plot lines in really quick.
Yeah, it's kind of a lot of Stephen King adaptations where they... there's just, you know, here's a book I wrote. It's a brick.
Right.
Well, we can make a marketable 90-minute movie out of this, but we're going to have to sacrifice... Everything. Yeah.
Except
everything
the
of
concept,
quality or theme or character. It has to go.
When I heard they were going to do a Pet Sematary remake, that was interesting to me in that I liked their sensibilities on Starry Eyes. This is a pair of directors, by the way. I liked their sensibility on Starry Eyes, and I thought, well, I'll be very interested to see how much deeper they can get into the story than the original did, because it's so surface. Their movie comes out, it's 88 minutes. And you go, what happened? Because the last thing we needed was a shorter version of this, and it's a short film.
Mm-hmm.
It does, however, just not to get too deep into the Pet Sematary remake, but it does, however, take quite a few different paths than the original did. It almost doesn't even make sense if you haven't seen the original, because so many of the things that are done in this movie are literally just, remember when they did that in this movie? Well, we're doing this instead.
Yeah, no, it was a bold choice when it was... wasn't a cat that died and they had to bury it and resurrect it. It was actually their hamster. So.
Ah, yes.
Vicious undead hamster.
Night of the Living Dead hamsters. I hear you. At any rate, what else did you get up to? Oh,
well,
you know what? Before we get into that, let's do a quick commercial break and we'll come back with your Halloween month of...
body horror / cult.
Exactly. We'll be right back. 40 seconds behind. I hate that. I like being right on time. Not long. Just between this and the other ad, less than 30 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Or left. Just got caught up in this Pet Sematary talk.
How can you not?
The thing is, I really want those guys to do something huge that would succeed, and it's like...
Yeah, it's funny.
I don't blame them either.
It's funny that you brought that up, the short Stephen King adaptation thing, because I was just thinking earlier today, for no particular reason, about Christine. As Christine was a Stephen King book I quite liked, and it was, again, it's another brick.
Short.
Well, they're a Carpenter film, which is...
And we're back on CGL's 1690 AM. Our show is called Cinema Smackdown. I'm Michael Brody. I'm joined by Shane Simmons. Today we are talking about, well, Halloween-themed months of movie watching from your hand-curated movie night that you do. We're talking about the fact that you have in the past done entire months of October where you will program related movies, and the first one we're talking about is body horror / cult movies, because apparently they go hand in hand.
Apparently, yes. I wasn't even planning that, but it became a theme in tandem.
Well, certainly Starry Eyes, as we mentioned before, is a body horror film with a cult story around it.
Yes.
And Videodrome is a body horror movie with Elements
of cult, yeah.
So they both fall nicely into that category. What else you got for me?
Well, I want to briefly mention one that wasn't part of the movie night thing, but it was right around the same time, and it was one night when I couldn't attend, so I told them, well, just watch this. And this is certainly in the body horror element, which is one that you recommended to me and that I quite liked, which was Upgrade.
Oh, yes, Upgrade. I didn't realize you were not in attendance for that one.
No, that was one of the ones where I had just watched it recently, and for whatever reason I couldn't attend that particular night. So occasionally I will give them instructions, watch this, because if I don't tell them specifically, watch this exact film, they will default to watching some piece of crap.
Ben Stiller movie.
No, specifically Dwayne Johnson. It's become a running joke at movie night that if I'm not there to guide them, they will watch a Dwayne Johnson movie.
That's fun.
And there's a never-ending pit of them that you can choose from.
Supply of this stuff. Agreed. So Upgrade, though, is one of those movies that if I wanted my movie night group to see it, I would want to be in the room, because there are some...
Oh, yeah, no, I lamented not being there, but, sometimes I just want to throw them a good movie, even if I'm not there, because left to their own devices, sometimes I'm so sad to ask a week later, so what did you watch last week? And it just squeezes my heart in bad, pointy ways.
It's interesting that, just touching a little bit more on that movie Upgrade, that as a body horror film, it is such a polarizing film among people I know who've seen it. There are those who watch it, are completely entranced by it. The fact is the movie has practical effects which look amazing. It has a slight futuristic setting, so there's a lot of minor future tech, meaning the cars look different, there's drones, there's different little things, but it's not too far advanced. And that also just is pretty sharp. The director did a really good job of making it look good. And the movie has a certain progression, the kind of story it tells, and it leads to a very interesting conclusion. And you're either in or you're out. And I've got friends who were so out that they hate the ending. And I'm like, the ending's great.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it has a certain exploitational element in that when the violence happens, it's super extreme.
High extreme.
And to end on such a thematic note is surprising for this sort of film. I really don't understand why people would have a particular issue with this film, because it's a little indie film that just works. It's lovely for what it does, and it's out. There's so many better films to despise.
Arguably, you could almost say it's a cult film because of the things that are around him making this happen. There is an entire machine at work doing what it's doing to this person.
Right.
So, it's not really a cult, but it's certainly the machinations.
Yes, it has a certain transhumanist element to it that certainly shares some qualities with cultism.
All right, well, what's our next one?
So the next one is, I'd say there's really no body horror element in this one whatsoever, but it's very culty, and that's The Invitation.
Yeah, that's true. No body horror.
Yeah, it's one of those awkward situations where you're invited to a party, and then someone tries to sell you Amway.
Except the Amway in this case.
The Amway in this case is a death cult.
It's a death cult, yeah. And it's a good film.
Yes, and it's one of those awkward situations where the main character is suffering from mental problems, depression, a number of issues in his life, and he starts to suspect something is terribly, terribly wrong at this party, to the point where he starts to embarrass himself, calling it out, and people are like, "Whoa, what are you doing?" And it gets to the point where you're so embarrassed on his behalf, you just start hoping, I hope he's right. I hope he's right that something horribly nefarious is going on.
Because otherwise this is a really embarrassing dinner party for him.
Yes, it is. It truly is one of the worst.
Yeah, that's another one where just tonally the director got it and was spot on in every major moment of that film.
Yeah.
So it's a really, really well-handled piece of cinema. It's probably the best realized movie of that year in terms of creating a tone and making you feel something.
And it should also be mentioned, same star as Upgrade.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. Inadvertent match made there when I showed these pretty close to each other, where everyone said, hey, wait a minute, that's the same guy.
Yeah, if you show them close enough together. He's a generic enough character actor, though. That
but he's very good.
I've noticed he's blended into the background of certain TV shows and movies. By the way, he is the star of a TV show from about 3 years ago called Quarry. Quarry is about a soldier who comes back from war and is at loose ends, uncomfortable, a little broken, and is calmly inducted into an assassination mafia, and he becomes a hitman who kills close up and from a distance for a contractor. It's a 10-episode series. It is nearly 10 perfect hours of storytelling. This is absolutely brilliant show. Same actor, and he does a really good job of playing this character, Corey, who's in a series of novels, inexplicably, I say, because they're written by a guy named Max Allan Collins, who never produced work that particularly interested me. He's a very cookie-cutter mystery writer. But I love the Quarry television show by Starry.
I might have to check that out, because as you know, I'm in it for any Hitman type story.
It is among the best. Quarry is an excellent show with long-form storytelling that has incredible payoffs. Like I said, it's 10 hours worth of build-up to certain events, and some of those events took my breath away in a way movies have never managed to, because 10 hours really affords you a lead time to get to a major point. I think, am I wrong, is his name Logan Marshall Green? Is that his name? The actor?
Could be. You're the one with the computer in front of you. So.
Yeah, but typing on the air is just rude.
Yeah, it's rude. Well, while you're typing away, I will mention the next film.
Yep, that's him, Logan Marshall Green.
There you go.
I did it! It's my brain! Tell me the next film.
So the next film is, again, not body horror, but has a cult element. Really, this one got slipped in because one of our attendees is a guy who will watch absolutely anything that is science fiction whatsoever. And I am always in horror of the garbage he's watched in favor of excellent movies of the past he has not seen.
That's the explanation for how TV shows like The Expanse exist and have a huge following. You're like, this is largely unwatchable, but it's science fiction.
And it's new. I'll watch it because it's new.
It's science fiction, and they're adhering to the rules of physics while expanding them into a science fiction way. That's not storytelling, but okay.
So I had actually shown this at movie night quite a few years ago, before this guy was in attendance. So we had a review of Quatermass in the Pit, which is my favorite of the Quatermass series. This one, the cult element, I would say, is when all hell breaks loose towards the end of the film, it becomes a sort of mass hysteria cultish element. I'm stretching on this one, admittedly. But it did seem to fit in slightly, and I could not resist the opportunity. It's one of those occasions where, I will have a conversation with him, and I'll go, what do you mean you haven't seen They Live? But you've watched 10 pieces of garbage this week alone.
Are you aware that you just made a connection between Quatermass and They Live, or is that unconscious?
It was unconscious, but I now, yes, you're right.
Realizing John Carpenter
wrote it under the pseudonym, Martin Quatermass? Which is not actually Quatermass's name in the movies. It's Bernard Quatermass, but...
It's not that film. It's Prince of Darkness.
Oh, Prince of Darkness, yes.
The one he wrote under the Quatermass.
Yes, because Prince of Darkness is actually half a step away from actually being a real Quatermass film.
Yeah, but Prince of Darkness is just so blasphemous, I can see why you might not want your real name. I mean, I directed this, but I didn't come up with it. Okay, fine, I came up with it. Please stop murdering my family. Like that's an effort to avoid cult activity, I think, is to take your name off a project.
Yeah, I only want to bear half responsibility for all the heart attacks the shock scarers in this movie will cause.
It's interesting that it is a very interesting thing to remove your name from a screenplay of a movie you're proud of, not a movie that you had trouble with. Right?
Yeah, I don't know.
That's the only example I can think of for someone removing their name, not because a film was re-edited by a producer and or changed without permission. I believe it's a director's cut, and therefore I just don't want my name associated with the writing of this blasphemous Jesus was an alien.
And if you wanted to name check Quatermass just because the material falls into that purview, you could have named one of the characters a variation of that or something.
Steven Soderbergh has recently taken a few aliases on projects, but I don't believe they're out of embarrassment. I think it's just a question of, I wrote this, I directed it, I edited it, I was a cinematographer, I have an appearance in it, and he goes on and on and on, and at a certain point it's like, maybe I should remove a few of my name moments off this. So I know in one...
Written by, directed by, edited by, produced by, catering by Steven Soderbergh. Yeah.
But I know in one case he changed his writing credit to Sam Lowry.
From Brazil, of course.
Which I was very pleased with.
So I'm wondering now if Carpenter was maybe in a dispute with the Writers Guild at the time. That's always a possibility, too.
Very true, very true. But I think, like I say, if anything was blasphemous enough to remove your own name from, might be the one to help you.
And yet I would point to that as one of his finest films. I absolutely love Prince of Darkness.
Yep. So, you had a Quatermass movie in there, which I don't really have comments for because I haven't seen a Quatermass movie since I was a child.
Oh, really? Wow. Okay.
And my recollection of them is essentially nothing. Okay.
Well, this is the third of 4, and it is superb. I quite love it. So, rounding out the cult/body horror, there's one that certainly falls into both categories, and that is one of your favorites, Hereditary. I felt they kind of needed to see it. It was the big deal horror movie of the year, even though I have hesitations about it. You actively dislike it.
No, I don't actively dislike it. I actively want every print of that film burned. That's how much I dislike. I hated that movie. I hated what he was trying to do and failed. I hated what he succeeded at. I hated all the performances that got so much attention. And, I mean, if you can find somebody who honestly thinks the last 10 minutes of that movie are good, they need to see a psychiatrist.
No, I've recently, I kind of stumbled upon in a conversation with you recently, I think the last 10 minutes now are super brilliant because after 20 years of Simpsons Halloween episodes, we finally have a movie that is literally Treehouse of Horror.
Yeah, but other than that, the last 10 minutes are horrid. They just defeat the purpose of the movie you've been watching altogether. Throw everything you've been seeing out the window and do a bunch of cheap special effects for no reason. I wasn't enjoying that film, and even I felt betrayed.
Yeah, well, it seems you're mostly alone in this because it did become quite a cult hit among the horror aficionados.
It's just, when something is so much a copy of previous work without adding anything to it, and also is annoying, which Hereditary is a very annoying movie. I can't watch a film where someone cries for an hour straight of the running time without starting to get antsy. At any rate, I have a lot of bile for that. And just to bring it up, though, you're listening to CGL's 1690 AM. We're the crankiest film reviewers in the world. At least I am. I'm Michael Brody. I'm joined by Shane Simmons. The show is called Cinema Smackdown. And if you bring up Hereditary, you're getting the Smackdown. With all that said, though, as much as I dislike that movie, I was quite delighted by Midsommar.
Mm-hmm. That freaks me out.
Shocking to me because it was not nearly as well reviewed, is not nearly as well liked, but actually had characters and tone that interested me and more subtle layers that paid off as opposed to made no sense whatsoever with the plot that was presented, which again is what Hereditary is.
I find it hilarious that you went from I am never watching another film by that son of a bitch again to I have to see everything he does from now on.
Yep. That's what happened. In fact, I haven't done it yet, but I do plan to go back and watch his 10 short films, all of which are available on
If he makes 2 or 3 feature films from going forward that you like, you know you're going to have to go back and watch Hereditary again.
It won't happen.
Yeah,
I really
you're going to think, maybe I missed something.
Don't do that to me, man. So we're just to recap, we're running down the months of films that you programmed every October in a Halloween theme attempt to educate your film society.
Yes.
Are we done with our cult?
Yeah, that'll wrap that up. So I was
cult month.
I was gonna turn the clock back a few years to the month we did witches, and for the witch month, I actually did some research and I tried to catch as many witch films I had not seen previously in order to find a few outlier examples, and failed utterly, and ultimately had to go with the movies I was planning to show anyway. But playing catch up with witch movies, I watched a couple of old classics, including I Married a Witch and Bell, Book and Candle, which are both rather light comedic romantic comedies, ultimately.
And horrifying to the right viewer.
Well, it struck me as like, I'll give these a try. It's like, no, I thought maybe I would start with something really light before I ended with something really super dark.
I don't remember it. I saw it over 30 years ago, but I remember Bell, Book and Candle being a much lesser Jimmy Stewart movie.
Yeah, well, Jimmy Stewart and Kim Novak reunited again with not quite so dark results as Vertigo.
Mm-hmm. Is that the only time they've reunited?
I think that's the only other film they were together.
As long as Jimmy Stewart grabs Kim Novak in a wig and screams over and over at her, "Put the wig on, I'm gonna love Bell, Book and Candle." I sure he was good. Maybe he does the same thing with a broomstick.
Yeah, I don't think you want to do that with someone who can cast curses on you. Curses and hexes are
not something you want to have imposed upon you.
It's worse than mace.
It's longer lasting.
So instead, I open with the 1960 Mario Bava film Black Sunday.
Right.
Specifically, the uncut version of it. There were a number of, I would almost say, censored versions of the film that existed back in the day. Because if you watch the uncut version for 1960, there's stuff in it that's pretty extreme. And of course, it is the one that features the mask of death being hammered into the face of a condemned witch in the opening sequence. This is a mask that has all sorts of spikes in it. And they really take a mallet to that thing. And it's, for 1960, it's quite shocking. And that's just the first of many shocks to be had in that film. Mm-hmm. Even though it's a black and white film as well, it's also surprisingly grisly. Mm-hmm. Especially considering this would be, as far as grisly eras of 1960s films, this is 8 years before Night of the Living Dead. Mm-hmm. Although gore started to seep its way into horror cinema in earnest in the 1960s, largely thanks to the efforts of Herschel Gordon Lewis, starting in 63, I believe, with Blood Feast. But those films are absolutely awful. I know they have their fans, but I am not among them.
When you show a film like Black Sunday to your unsuspecting movie night crowd, do you try to set the tone of, try to put yourself back in the mindset of the era? Because that movie is a little challenging for somebody from today.
Unfortunately, there's been an ebb and flow of attendees at movie night, and there are some people who are really up for, show us something interesting or something historic and
something challenging. And
then there, unfortunately, it is weighted more heavily these days to people who's like, show me something new.
Right.
It's old dusty things. Because in the past, I have gotten away with going quite far back. Mm-hmm. In fact, the farthest back I've ever gone was during this witch month, but I only showed them a clip because I realized I cannot show them the entire 1920s documentary Haxan.
Right.
But I felt compelled to show them just a little bit to give them a sense of what it was, because that's an extraordinary film about witchcraft that, in a way, it's scarier than a lot of modern horror, in that it has that oldie-timey practical effects by way of deteriorated film stock look to it, that a lot of modern films, if they wanted to do something creepy, they would try to recreate that. Ooh, we discovered this old dusty film, and it shows this really weird, twisted, nutty, sicko type stuff. And that is literally what Haxan is. It's. I don't know if you've ever seen any of this whatsoever, but it is one of those. I think 1922. So beats beats the oldest film I've ever shown at movie night by a few years. The other contenders being I have shown them Harold Lloyd, Safety Last, and I've shown them Buster Keaton's The General, which are the only two silent films I've ever gotten away with showing at movie night, just because they're so funny and action-packed that even by modern sensibilities, you can see the value in them, even if you're a complete Luddite who... there's so many people now who have watched nothing but modern films. We have a whole generation, perhaps multiple generations at this point, who have never even seen a black and white film. Right. So, I like to go historic sometimes, and I do like to say, yes, put yourself in the mindset that when this came out, nothing like it had ever been seen on the screen before. Mm-hmm. Since then, it's been ripped off 1,000 times, but... when you show people something like Psycho, which is one of the most ripped-off films ever made, you have to remind them, no, all the stuff you're seeing, this is the first time this was done in a film. I showed them Citizen Kane. That was another one that is just brimming with shots and techniques that we've seen a million times since. And I have to tell them, no, this is 1941. Orson Welles, it's inventing everything you see right here.
Yeah, you see this camera angle? The only way you could get that camera angle is if you dug a trench and put the camera in it and then pointed it upwards. That's not some magic shot. You had to physically do that in order to get that angle, which he did in a lot of cases. Yeah.
Just full of stuff. I've also been tempted to show them Orson Welles, The Lady from Shanghai, just to show them the origin of a House of Mirrors climax, which is something else that has been ripped off over and over and over again. But it took a genius like Orson Welles to figure out, how do you shoot a scene in a hall of mirrors without capturing the camera and the crew?
Yeah, and the trick is he didn't. It's in nearly every shot. There's a shot in, of all things, the movie Hook, where Dustin Hoffman has a real close-up, and I saw that movie in the cinema, and he just puts his elbow up on a table, and his reflective hook is right in camera, and there's a blurry image of the film crew for quite a long time. I mean, it's essentially blurry enough that you can't tell what it is. But if you're really staring at it, you're like, that's clearly a crew filming him. Hidden in this... Yeah,
look, there's Steven Spielberg himself phoning it in.
I wouldn't call Hook his movie.
I'm actually kind of fond of Hook myself.
It's filled with problems, but at least he's trying.
Yeah, he's not modern Spielberg back then.
He's not Ready Player One Spielberg. I'll get my assistants to literally direct this movie for me. Yeah, I think that's what that is. Are we still on our Witches
Yes.
month?
I did a encore presentation because I'd shown it years earlier, but I said, okay, fine, let's do Suspiria again, the original, not the remake. Mm-hmm. Just because occasionally... I've only dared show them 2 Argento films at this point. I'd like to show them more, but Argento can be a hard pill to swallow.
And most of his movies are terrible. Now I'm kind of a fan.
Awesome bits in them.
Yes. That's the problem.
So it's like, I don't know if they'd have the patience to sit through The Bird with Crystal Plumage, but
that's a good one.
Yeah, exactly. But there's a couple sequences that are amazing.
I think that the easiest, cleanest, best movie to watch from him, it's not my favorite, but it's probably Deep Red.
Yeah, I've shown him that one as well.
Deep Red moves really well and has a good ending. Whereas some of the other movies move poorly and have a good ending, or move really well and have a terrible ending.
Even though I've shown them Suspiria twice, I've shown them Deep Red once, and I thought that this is the other most accessible one, and I got the distinct impression it really pissed them off.
See, now my personal favorite Argento movie is...
Tenebra.
Yeah. Tenebrae.
Or Tenebrae.
Tenebrae, the English voiced-over version of Tenebrae. Or whatever the real pronunciation should be. And yet, I've rewatched that movie, and it is poorly paced, and chunks of it are awful and or slow, but the payoffs are massively entertaining. And that's what that movie is. I like the general concept of it. It's pretty much a Stephen King story when you think about it. It's about a writer whose book murders are coming true. But it has a phenomenal ending.
Yeah, but there's just something. Yeah, there's something about that Argento pacing that is so off-putting to most people. It's hard to believe that he had a hand in the screenplay for Once Upon a Time in the West. But under the very assured direction of Sergio Leone, whatever ideas he brought to that mix play out magnificently.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. There's a tiny hint of Argento in that film. You know, something about it. Maybe he's just influenced enough by Leone going forward. He developed his own stuff, but he's still... And Argento's still alive. He could strike again. He's made movies in the last 20 years, none of which are watchable.
Right.
They're still his films. It's one of those things where you kind of wish he'd just do one more good one.
Mm-hmm.
Odds are against it, but it would be interesting. Did Argento direct Giallo?
No, I don't think so, no.
I need to look it up.
Yeah,
no. Continue to speak.
Okay, so we went two Italian films in a row. So I figured I'll mix it up and go Spain for the next one. Mm-hmm. So I showed Alex de Iglesias' Witching and Bitching. Have you seen that one?
No.
Okay.
I'm well aware of it.
Yeah,
just to take us back, Dario Argento did 100% direct the movie Giallo.
Oh, he did?
Starring Adrian Brody, and I have a very, very fond memories of that movie as a picture that doesn't work, but is a fascinating failure. And it is a movie that both Argento and Adrian Brody were removed from, and neither of whom were ever paid for their work.
Oh, wow.
But it's still a movie that if you watch it, you say, oh, wow, I see what you're doing here, and it's a terrible idea, but I can't get enough of it. It's kind of a great bad movie, I guess, would be the way to put it. All right, back to Witching and Bitching.
Yeah, so De La Iglesias films tend to go extreme. He's also the guy who did 800 Bullets, which is, for him, mild and fun, although it's about a spaghetti western cast that basically take over a western frontier theme park.
Yeah, he's also the director of Perdita Durango, the unofficial sequel to Wild at Heart.
Ah, okay.
Which is an interesting, ugly movie.
Okay. Yeah, well, ugly is something that seems to permeate a lot of his films. I'm also thinking of The Last Circus, which is something that a film about the ramifications of the Spanish Civil War of the 1930s.
Well, we'll be back with more Alex de Iglesias after this message. Sorry, we just right on it. And I can tell you're winding up to a little bit more thought, so won't be long. Oh, there's Allison again.
Yeah.
Plans are available for all students and staff. Some even include
it's an ad for meal plans.
So visit concordia.ca/food for more information or to purchase the right meal plan for you.
I want her radio voice.
She's good.
Yeah.
She's good. She's a lot like she sounds like a dead serious version of A.D. Bryant. She's the actress from Saturday Night Live.
Okay.
Just A.D. Bryant usually is doing a crazy voice, but once in a while she's serious, and that's what she sounds like. Go figure. We're back. Just one second. We're almost there. And we're back on TGLO 1690 AM. Our show is called Cinema Smackdown. I'm Michael Brody. I'm joined by Shane Simmons. We are running down the Halloween-themed movie night selections you've made. Theme months, so multiple movies under one theme that you showed for a whole month of various years. And you were running down the Alex de Iglesias films.
Yeah, I was talking about The Last Circus being one of his more extreme, ugly films. Now, if you want to see a film, and I don't know why you would, but it seems to be a theme these days, if you want to see a film about psychotic clowns, this is really the film for you. It does, I would say, both it and the Joker, as far as, these are really upsetting clowns.
Wow, outdoes it and the Joker, movies I've already banished from my mind forever. Interesting. How could that be done?
Well, maybe you, but not everyone else who seems to absolutely love those films.
All of those people are no longer people I respect under any circumstances.
And we just reduced our last viewer to 0, so...
The world is now divided into people who like the Joker and people I still have respect for.
I can't wait until our next ratings numbers come in and we realize that we lost that last guy in Peoria who was still listening. It's like, I like the Joker. Screw you.
Well, okay then.
Just for the record, half the people in this room like the Joker.
I'd say less than half. I even think under circumstances like this, my veto power counts for more.
I only count as 3/8 of a man.
So. Oh, that got weird. Let's not go there.
I rounded out the witch theme month with a film which annoying people like to call the Vavitch.
No, you mean the VV itch.
Yeah. I keep
as smart people call it, the VV itch.
I've heard a number of people refer to Vavitch, and it's like, oh, just piss off, because the W in witch was created with 2 V's on the poster, and some people think they're being funny. The same way that the movie Seven is not Seven.
Seven N.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, there's something about The Witch that, when a movie has a pace as lightning fast as that one, it's hard to understand why people don't like it.
Oh, it's a slow burn with some oldie-timey English that you will have to listen to with both ears wide open to decipher that. Oh yeah, this is very early colonial type English.
It is a challenging film, to say the least.
Yeah, I personally love the mood of it. It will not be to everybody's taste, but I don't think anyone saw it and came away thinking, well, this was poorly done, because it is exactly what it is trying to be, and it does it extremely well, but it might not be for you.
It's safe to say it wasn't for me.
I get the impression that no films are for you sometimes, so...
No, I have a giant list of great stuff I saw this year, but boy, is The Witch not one of those from any year. Just no connection to that movie. It just failed to connect with me, and that's a rough thing for films. So when that happens, and yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and say, yes, I did not connect with the CGI crap fest of It 2. What a shock. Not like a really well-made movie on any level. You can kind of tell that the filmmakers are like, oh, they really did let us make the sequel? I guess we should start brainstorming ideas. Oh, no one has any? Well, let's kind of do what we did in the first one then. Wait, I've got it. Giant CGI lumberjack. Genius.
Well, that is in the book, actually. It doesn't specify it's a CGI lumberjack, but nevertheless, that sequence does actually happen. I'm more concerned with the giant... Well, we got to do the climax where the It true form is like a giant spidery thing. But we'll stick a clown on top because this is known as the clown movie. So we better have a clown in it.
Same thing they did in the original.
No, in the original the TV. No, it is a terrible special effect spider thing.
But does it have a billion teeth?
No. The less said about the adult sequence in the miniseries, the original miniseries, the better. Interesting that the two films, the miniseries and the 2-part film adaptation, both make that choice of let's not cut back and forth. We'll just separate the kid sequence with the adult sequence, and in both cases, the adult sequence is not the strong part.
Right.
They do better with the kids in both cases.
All right. Which
is odd because you think adult actors would be able to carry themselves a little better than the child actors, and yet certainly the miniseries version is just cringeworthy as you watch the low points of so many careers.
I don't know. I still like John Ritter. He's fine. Isn't he in that one?
He is, but there's some seriously bad soap opera acting.
There is no way you can call that the low point of Harry Anderson's career.
It actually is. He's no Harry the Hat in that one.
Yeah, he went on to be Dave in Dave's World, playing Dave Barry.
Right.
That's a career low point.
Is it?
Oh,
compared to the It,
it's not great.
I don't know. You watch some clips from that It miniseries. I think you will quickly discover. Oh wow! Especially considering He was eclipsed. His role was completely eclipsed, the late great Harry Anderson, by Bill Hader, the not yet late, but certainly great Bill Hader.
Please stop trying to pretend Bill Hader was good in the It movie. He's not.
Oh,
he's not. He's great.
I'm more amused by him in that film than anything else.
Not me. It just made me angry that he spent months of his life on that project and not something I would have enjoyed. So, no, I veto that opinion. Stop trying to sell me on it. It's hurting my head. Let's get back to your actual subject of witch movies from that month.
Well, that was it for the witch movie.
Oh my goodness, we got through it, and we have 8 minutes left.
So I'm going to wrap it up with a truncated theme that we did. Sure. I decided, again, this was interrupted by people traveling, so I only had a couple of weeks to squeeze in an entire theme. So I went with the original Frankenstein Trilogy. The 2 James Whale films, followed by Son of Frankenstein from 1939.
Followed by Frankenstein Unbound.
No.
Roger Corman.
No, much as there are many Frankenstein movies to choose from, and I could have done a 6-month period of nothing but Frankenstein movies, because there's that many. I did want to go, do the Wayback Machine and hit them with some very early Universal Monsters stuff. So the one night we actually, because they're short enough, we actually did a double feature of both Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein, which is an interesting example of the rapid development of cinema in the 1930s once the sound era came in. 1931 Frankenstein, although it's very good, you can tell it's still in prototype era for how to handle a sound film. Whereas just a few years later with 1935's Bride of Frankenstein, it is a full-blown, fully scored, fully realized film that many people celebrate today as one of the best monster films ever made, and I would have to agree.
Well, that's what I was going to bring up, is the original Frankenstein has largely no score music.
Yeah. It was a period when they would maybe play a piece of music over the opening titles and the end titles, and there would be little to nothing in between as far as the music score goes.
Which makes some of the sequences a little bit awkward when they're incredibly overly dramatic and there's no score to back up your actor hamming it up.
Yeah, or drowning a little girl, as happens in the non-censored version of the film.
But the interesting thing is they selected a few clips from the first Frankenstein movie for the 1984 classic Weird Science, the John Hughes directed movie about 2 kids mad sciencing a woman out of spare parts. And in that sequence in the movie, the Frankenstein scenes are A, colorized, and B, have score behind them.
Mm-hmm,
so they really felt the need to, we're going to compare our movie to Frankenstein, but we better jazz up the original Frankenstein a little.
Yeah, well, they did that with also 1931, their version of Dracula. Where in recent years there was a version of the Bela Lugosi Dracula that came out with a Philip Glass score. Mm-hmm. Because, again, there was an opening bit of classical music, a closing bit of music for the end credits, and nothing in between, so they brought in Philip Glass to do a whole score.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, he's not my first choice. But
but it's interesting, yeah.
Exactly. So any thoughts on good old James Whale?
James Whale, of course, his other films from the period include The Old Dark House and The Invisible Man, and they're all wonderful, inventive, imaginative little genre films. But he didn't come back for the third one, which is Son of Frankenstein, which is actually my favorite of the bunch, because it has this wonderful dynamic. Karloff appears as a monster for the last time, although in that film he's mostly being used as a murder weapon. He's not the realized character he was in the previous film. But instead we get the wonderful dynamic that happens between broken-necked shepherd Igor. Igor is not the assistant in those films, by the way. The assistant is Fritz in the original Frankenstein films. Mel Brooks told us a lie in Young Frankenstein, as he seemed to have misremembered the role Igor had to play. Bela Lugosi played this Igor character in 2 of the films. He's in this one, but even more amusing is Basil Rathbone as the son of Frankenstein, the literal son of Frankenstein, and Lionel Atwood as the one-armed, or Atwill as the one-armed police inspector who had his arm ripped off by the Frankenstein monster when he was a child, and now has a thing about trying to figure out what's up with that Frankenstein family.
Is that like he was a child who ran over trying to stop him from drowning a little girl?
Yeah, well, who knows? Because there's no real point in any of the two previous films where, well, wait, when did this happen?
When did he rip a child's arm off?
Because the Frankenstein monster, although he inadvertently drowns a girl, he's not this malicious, I'm going to do terrible things to children type of character. He's more like, threaten me with fire and I might beat you to death, but other than that, I just want to be left alone and hide in a corner. He's that kind of monster.
Yeah, I'm down with that guy.
Yeah.
He's sympathetic.
So there's a wonderful scene in Son of Frankenstein, which I highly recommend, where Basil Rathbone and Lionel Atwill play a very aggressive game of darts. And Lionel Atwill keeps the darts that he's using stuck in his wooden arm. There's wonderful stuff that happens. It's parodied in Young Frankenstein by Mel Brooks. And the thing is, the original scene that it's parodying is so funny that I misremembered stuff from that scene as being in Young Frankenstein, and it's not. Mm-hmm. It's almost a scene that was above parody because in and of itself it was so damn funny and amusing.
Do you actually recollect the name of the director?
Oh, yeah, I meant to look it up. No, I meant to look it up before I came, and I did. I have forgotten.
We're so inundated with the name James Whale.
Yeah, and you can tell the style is very different because James Whale has this very gothic look, whereas Son of Frankenstein, the sets are much more sparse, and all the mood is done with these extreme shadows. It has a very arresting look to it that although different, is almost definitive for what the genre has to offer.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, that's just about going to wrap us up for this week. Our rundown of your months of programming for the October.
But I'm sure we ourselves will squeeze in more Halloween-themed episodes before the date arrives.
Before the end of the year.
Yeah. We'll just carry it through till Christmas.
I always enjoy a good horror theme. At any rate, I've been Michael Brody. I've been joined by Shane Simmons. I'm going to issue a slight apology for my extra crankiness this week about certain stuff.
Oh, good, because I was about to resign.
Shane's our most sensitive member, which I understand.
Well, you've driven everyone else away, I've noticed.
And with that in mind, we leave you with that thought, and we'll be back next week with more Cinema Smackdown.
Listening to CJLO 1690 AM.
Sorry, I hope I wasn't actually so awful that you were...
No.
Fuck that guy forever.
You're only slightly cunty.
Yeah, that's intentional. That's not like, what do you mean? I'm very reasonable. I'm definitely aware of the not-so-niceness of my comments about these movies that are far too readily embraced. Meaning, what does it mean? We're going to get more of that shit.
Oh, that beloved film. Fuck that. Oh, that beloved film. Fuck that.
Film, It Chapter 2.
No, well, yeah, there aren't a lot of people who...
Nobody liked that.
No. Even fans of the original film came back and said, that one was kind of disappointing.
I'll fully agree that there are people, uneducated people, who've never watched enough movies, who like the Joker, and you. But there's...
No,
people,
there's me and there's fucking everybody else who love the Joker except a handful of...
Hey, look, here's the thing.
Progressive weirdo critics.
If the Joker movie starred, I'm going to say, Adam Sandler at his Adam Sandlerist without doing any attempt to act. You know what I mean? Just like hamming it up like Waterboy. He does the Waterboy in the Joker movie.
That's going to go like, Punch Drunk Love, but okay.
I don't hate him in Punch Drunk Love.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah.
But my point is, if he was doing the Waterboy, that performance for the entire movie, you'd dismiss it out of hand. You'd be like, well, I can't watch this. It's awful. And for me, that's every movie with Joaquin Phoenix. So watching this, he doesn't do it. Let's be clear.
I want to see Adam Sandler do the Joker as Opera Man.
There you go. But to be clear, Joaquin Phoenix does not